Here. Go ahead.
All right, finally something's going well.
We've been replaced.
Okay, we got.
I guess we're not as important as Sam or Kadi.
All right, well, first of all, let me introduce this man that we are about to have a conversation with. He writes for 411mania.com. This man, he has probably one of the most insightful, very well-educated perspectives on MMA, and I call him one of the wise minds of MMA online.
I think he's the best one.
The man we were talking about, he's taken time out from his adventures in Lebanon with his family. It's Mr. Samir Kadi. How are you doing, sir? Hello?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, what's up, man?
No problem. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So we're just going to jump right into it. Well, first of all, I actually wanted to ask you, so how did you actually get into this whole, loving MMA and just actually writing for it, and especially writing such good articles?
Well, in terms of getting into MMA in general, as a kid, I've always been fascinated by martial arts. I've practiced Taekwondo for a while, then Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a few years ago, and I think it was right about the time where Pride had the first middleweight Grand Prix, which is 205. After Chuck and Quentin Jackson fought, that's when I really got into it. In terms of being a writer, it was nothing I had planned, really. It just 411 Mania were hiring. I decided to send a sample, and here I am.
Well, a lot of people start off with the love for MMA, and I'm guessing that's where yours stemmed as well. But let's get right into the Ultimate Fight night that went down last night. Surprised you still managed to catch it all the way down there in Lebanon. But one thing that I wanted to talk about first, Sean McCorkle, did you actually get to watch that fight with Christian Moorcroft?
Yeah, I did.
Sean McCorkle one-hit wonder, or he just did not look really good at all at Christian Moorcroft?
Well, the thing with McCorkle is that, and it pains me to say this, but he was never that great of a fighter. I think fighting Mark Hunt on his UFC debut was kind of I wouldn't say a gift, because Mark Hunt is always one punch away from ending your night, but let's face it, Mark Hunt, I mean, until his recent win, he hadn't won an MMA bout in years, and on the ground, his game is very deficient. So, but after that, I never thought he had a chance against Struve. And while I expected him to be more competitive last night, this doesn't really shock me. I mean, McCorkle, you got to keep in mind, he didn't start training seriously until like a few months ago. Until he signed with the UFC, he never took his training seriously. By his own admission, I mean, he wasn't training full time or anything, so it's not particularly shocking.
Yep, he didn't look really at all like a lot of people were putting him out to be. Like, since his fight with Mark Hunt, he got dominated by Struve, and now he just got like thrown around with Christian Moorcroft. So do you think the UFC will be cutting him by now, or giving him one more shot?
Well, the thing is, the heavyweight division is kind of I'm sorry about that. The heavyweight division is kind of shallow, especially when it comes to the lower tier fighters, where your gatekeepers, your kind of B-level fighters. It's still lacking. That's why these guys might get a little bit more leeway, but it doesn't shock me if they release him. I mean, honestly, he's not a UFC caliber fighter, but like I said, the heavyweight division is so weak that they could probably use every guy they can get. I mean, just a few months ago, the guy was co-headlining a major card.
Yep. All right, moving right on with the card. Michael McDonald making his UFC debut against Figueroa. Did you actually get to see that fight, and what were your impressions of Michael McDonald and his opponent as well?
Yeah, well, McDonald, I always thought he was a good prospect, and he proved that yesterday, but last night. But the thing is, I thought he kind of caught a lucky break that his opponent his takedown and defense wasn't that good. So even when McDonald got tired and his cardio looked a bit iffy, which is always a red flag when you're talking about guys at the lower weights. Not often do you see guys at featherweight, bantamweight, lightweight, gassing. So, but I think this is the sort of thing that comes with experience. Well, he'll know how to take it a little bit slowly at first. But yeah, he was kind of, I wouldn't say lucky, but he was kind of fortunate, I guess, that his opponent's takedown defense wasn't that good. So he was able to have his way with him, just securing takedowns, which basically won him the fight later on. But the fight itself was awesome. I mean, even his opponent, who took Figueroa, who took the fight on really short notice, I think he handled himself really, really well.
Do you think if Figueroa had more time to prepare for this fight, he would have actually maybe even beat McDonald?
Well, the thing is, his takedown defense looked so poor that it makes me think it was something, like there was something fundamentally wrong with his game, as opposed to, a direct result of taking the fight on short notice. But yeah, it couldn't have helped him. Obviously, I guess if he trained more, maybe his takedown defense would have looked sharper, and if he could have, avoided some of those takedowns, who knows? It was a close fight, so who knows?
Yep. The next fight, I believe it was the next fight, Chris McRae and John Hathaway. There's a lot of controversy around this fight. Who do you think won? What was your scoring, and why would you score it that way?
Yeah, I thought Hathaway won at least two rounds. But I never expected it to be that competitive. That's what shocked me the most. I thought Hathaway would have a far easier time. I don't see any justification for the split decision, really. But, we've seen far worse decisions, and at least at the end of the day, the right guy won, in my opinion. But Hathaway, the thing is, I think maybe the Diego fight was detrimental to him, if that makes any sense, in that maybe a lot of people thought he was better than he actually was, and they kind of have a little bit higher expectations now.
Yeah, ever since he beat Diego Sanchez, he has like this aura around him that a lot of people are putting on. Especially like a lot of people thought this was a step down in the fight for him. Especially, I believe he was coming off a win as well. So
no, a loss.
He was coming off a loss.
Oh yeah, he beat Mike Powell. Sorry,
Loss, yeah.
I just had a lapse right there. But yeah, next up, Alex Caceres, getting dominated. Do you still believe he has UFC is going to give him another shot, or is he just out? Like he just has no place for him?
Well, the thing is, if they're going to decide to stick him around, it's just to please Spike. On these Spike cards, Spike always likes to have these Ultimate Fighters alumni, because they've had their exposure on Spike. They sort of look at them as homegrown talent, so to speak. So if they're going to keep him around, it's just to showcase him on some Spike's fights. But yeah, if they release him, that wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah, I had a feeling that, with Smirzer, he actually had more experience than Caceres. So I was thinking, even though he's coming off a 3-fight losing streak, he had this one in the bag. So moving right on, the Mike Russo and John Madsen fight. A lot of people were putting a lot of hype on John Madsen because he's been on a tear ever since the Ultimate Fighter. Were you expecting Mike Russo to just take him out like that, or were you expecting a more competitive fight?
No, I actually favored Madsen to win. I thought, even though Russo is a decent wrestler, I thought Madsen was a better wrestler, and I thought based on what we've seen from them, he actually had the better striking too. I mean, yeah, Russo beat Duffy, but he was getting dummied on for the better part of that fight before landing that punch that knocked Duffy out. So, in fact, no, I kind of expected Madsen to win, and I was kind of surprised. Not that Madsen is that good of a fighter. I mean, before he took out Ivo, he basically had one lackluster decision after the other. But I thought he was still skilled enough to beat Russo, and good on Russo for showing actual improvement.
Yep. A lot of people thought he was just going to get dominated in this fight, and he really proved a lot of people wrong. Next up, I'm going to jump to the co-main event, actually. Dan Hardy coming off of 3 losses now. What do you think the UFC should do with him? Should they give him another, mid to top level fighter, or give him a gatekeeper to keep him relevant?
Yeah, well, with Hardy, it's a bit iffy because, first of all, he got the title shot against GSP, which I think made people get the impression that he's a main event level guy, and he's just not. He's a good fighter. He's charismatic. His stand-up is good, but yeah, his wrestling has always been deficient, and it didn't shock me one bit to see Johnson take him down the way he did. I mean, for some reason, people expect that to be a stand-up fight, but what Johnson did was the right thing. Whether Hardy, I guess Johnson isn't a top welterweight, so because Hardy lost to him, it would shock me if the UFC would give him a top welterweight for his next fight. I guess if they absolutely need to get Martin Kampman back on track, that's an appropriate fight for Hardy. Otherwise, someone like a Mike Pierce, a Jake Ellenberger maybe, who I think have actually bigger futures in the division, even though they're not as exciting as Hardy or as charismatic. But I think in terms of fighters, they actually could be much better fighters than him, and I think one or the other would be a very appropriate fight.
As for Anthony Johnson, who would you see as a viable opponent for him next? Would it be like Diego Sanchez, Carlos Condit?
Yeah, Diego Sanchez was the one that immediately popped up to mind the moment you asked me that question. I think that would be a good fight. Yeah, that welterweight division is so deep, man. Basically, they could give him like a Paulo Thiago or something. Carlos Condit too. There's no shortage of fighters there. If they want to see if Ryan Ebersol is actually legit following his win over Chris Lido, that's also a good fight. There's plenty of guys in that division for Johnson to fight. I'm fine, really, whatever they decide to go with.